Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 106, noes 7.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,672, Rules Report 474, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the general business law.
On a motion by Mr. Moyer, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. The bill is laid aside.
Assembly 10,679, Rules Report 475, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the insurance law.
On a motion by Ms. Barrett, Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 114, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,682, Rules Report 476, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the executive law.
On a motion by Mr. Soretto, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 119, noes 1.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,690, Rules Report 477, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the insurance law.
Bill is laid aside.
Assembly 10,707, Rules Report 478, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the education law and the public health law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Correct? No. We laid aside cancel. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 115, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
No, honey. This is
Assembly 10,710, Rules Report 479, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the criminal procedure law.
Bill is laid aside.
Assembly 10,711, Rules Report 480, Committee on Rules, an act to direct the Department of Financial Services.
On a motion by Mr. Sturpey, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Works pretty good. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 113, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,712, Rules Report 481, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the election law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect on the 180th day.
Clerk will record the vote. Ms. Walker to explain her vote.
Speaker, this is a wonderful day for New York State. We understand that in Washington, through the Voting Rights Act, we lost Section 5 pre-clearance coverage. And New York State had 3 covered counties, which includes Kings County, Manhattan, and also the Bronx. Many of us are in voting rights districts, and we are able to represent our districts accordingly. And since we don't have those protections anymore in federal law, I think it was quite honorable of us to be the first state in the United States to be able to introduce a pre-clearance section to voting rights, or any changes that would happen to the policies and or procedures that would affect communities that have had discriminatory election practices will have to be pre-cleared by the New York State Attorney General. It's a very proud moment. I feel honored to be the person to have had the opportunity to introduce this piece of legislation, and I thank all my colleagues for your support in taking on this very important endeavor. Again, I'll be voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Ms. Walker in the affirmative. Mr. Barron to explain his vote.
Quickly commend the sponsor of this bill. It is historic. There are people who died, who shed their blood for our rights to vote, and on this day, that blood-shedding sacrifice that was made for our right to vote has been protected by your work. So I want to commend you and commend this body for appreciating and passing this much-needed bill to bring about justice in the voting process. Congratulations.
Ms. Robinson to explain her vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this bill. I am very pleased that the sponsor has introduced this piece of legislation. For all the many years that I've been involved in electoral politics, we have struggled to make sure that everyone had the right to vote. The pre-clearance that was part of the rule of the land, so to speak. The rule of the land was that Section 5 of the Voting Rights Law to require pre-clearance, meaning that any time that there were changes in the voting lines, anytime there was a change in anything that had to do with voting, that it had to be pre-cleared by the Justice Department. And so we are so pleased that this piece of legislation has come forward so that we can ensure that the franchise of voting is continued within the state of New York in a way that people will not have to be standing on lines and providing ID and all those other kinds of things that were used to suppress people in the past. So I'm very pleased for this legislation, and I thank the sponsor. And thank you.
Ms. Bashad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to explain my vote. Again, I want to commend the sponsor of this bill, which protects our voting rights, and I'm just really excited about this. This is historical. Nothing has been, this is the first time this has happened in terms of introducing this type of legislation, which not only protects our voting rights, but it also protects communities to make sure that they have the opportunity to elect people that represent and reflect the community. So I'm really excited about this voting rights bill. I want to commend the sponsor again, and I want to congratulate you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I would like to commend the sponsor of this piece of legislation, my sister, Assemblywoman Latrice Walker. You did it, my girl. To lose Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act at the federal level was very devastating to communities such as mine. I stand in this moment in reflection of all those who fought so hard for us to have the right to vote, for all of those who for all of those who fought so hard for us to have, the apple does not fall far from the tree. For all those who fought so hard for us to have the right for us to vote, for those who have died, for those who have sacrificed, this moment is for all of you guys. And as a state, New York State has always been a trailblazing state. And what we do here now will ripple across the country, and I hope that the other states take notes and follow. Again, I commend the sponsor. I know this was not easy, but it was necessary, and we did accomplish that this evening. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Lipton.
Explain my vote. Also, I want to congratulate the sponsor. This is a very important bill. We had a bad Supreme Court decision on the Shelby decision out of Texas. We saw Texas immediately start suppressing votes by changing poll sites, surprise, surprise, and other things. And other states are following. And so it's very important that New York State reiterate its commitment to the principles of the Federal Voting Rights Act. So I strongly support this bill and urge my colleagues to vote for it.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Made a very wrong-headed decision in removing these protections, which have been a bulwark of our efforts in this country to make sure that everybody's votes count. This is one of many areas where people are hoping the U.S. Congress will act to correct that. But as in many areas, it's important that states step up and act. And I congratulate and commend the sponsor for coming up with a workable, creative solution to address this problem here in New York State. And I vote in the affirmative.
Mr. Sepulveda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, want to commend the sponsor of this bill. The Supreme Court decision which eliminated preclearance, I thought, was one of the worst decisions we've had in the last 20 years. And it's incumbent upon us as a state, it's New York State and other states, to make sure that we create a system where these preclearance protections are reestablished. You know, the trend in federal government, federal courts, is to remove some of our voting rights, to dissipate some of the rights that we fought for in the 1960s during the civil rights struggle. And so it's important that we, as a state, as a progressive state, that we set the future and we make sure that other states follow suit, because make no mistake, preclearance was essential to our voting rights. And we want to make sure that states follow, especially in the South, because if not, many communities of colors will lose their right, and this will have a devastating impact on our voting rights. And again, I want to commend you, Assemblywoman Walker.
Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to explain my vote. I thank you for the permission, Mr. Speaker. We have been watching spectacle occurring across the country over the last couple of months. somebody running for President of the United States and talking about taking our country back. I don't know how far back, but tonight, with this vote, New York State takes control of our voting rights and voting system. We are not taking this back, we're taking it forward. And when the folks in Washington decided to take back something that we fought very hard for and we enjoyed for a while, but we got real smart. And my colleague, who is the sponsor of this bill, came up with the right idea. We have codified, this law codifies the right, and Washington, no matter who is there, and with what's going on in this election, we have to worry about who may end up there. But this takes away the war because New York State sets a precedent that other states can copy. And I'm really pleased to vote for this. I congratulate the sponsor. I congratulate all of those who worked hard to bring this to a vote. And I look forward to hearing the governor's signature, the governor signing this into law. And we have taken our rights back. I vote.
Are there any other votes? Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 131, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,713, Rules Report 482, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law.
Bill is laid aside.
Assembly 10,723, Rules Report 483, Committee on Rules, an act relating to supplementary funding for dedicated programs for public school students.
On a motion by Ms. Jaffe, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect July 1st, 2016.
Clerk will record the vote. Ms. Jaffe to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation is a significant step forward in that it establishes a framework of operational and fiscal support and oversight with the monitors and the State Education Department Commissioner, as well as additional reimbursable aid for the East Ramapo School District. This will restore and enhance educational opportunities for the students and the students who attend the public school of East Ramapo. It will also foster a positive environment, enhance collaboration, and restore trust. And this legislation, as we move forward, will truly provide the opportunities for the students. And it has been supported by the school board as well as the community and the public school sector. And I will vote in the affirmative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Zembrowski to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, this has been a topic that's been before the legislature. And although our work is not done and the story of this district is not over, I truly think this is a step in the right direction. We have to remember that kids are in these classrooms tomorrow, and we have to do something to help them. We have to improve the educational programs there and provide some oversight. So I think this bill has been a collaborative approach. We've gone back to the drawing board and tried to come up with something that would pass both houses, and I think we did that. I'm hopeful that this bill will provide a better learning environment for the kids and also, hopefully, a better collaborative environment for the entire community. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, I'll be voting in the affirmative, and also all my colleagues to do so as well.
Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 119, noes 0.
The bill is passed.
Assembly 10,724, Rules Report 484, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the Public Health Law.
On a motion by Mr. Gottfried, the Senate bill is before the House. The Senate bill is advanced. Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other? Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 111, noes 9.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we go on to the B calendar, I understand we may have some housekeeping, and then there's another bill I'd like to take up before we move on.
Assembly Bill 6563A on behalf of Mr. Abate. Assembly Bill recalled from the Senate. Clerk will read the title of the bill. Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, sir. I understand there's still a little more before we can go to the housekeeping. So why don't we take up Rules Report number 460 on page 7 by Mr. Cahill, which was inadvertently laid aside.
Going back. Clerk will read.
Assembly 10,470, Rules Report 460. Mr. Cahill, an act to amend the financial services law.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will read the. Clerk will record the vote. Are there any other votes? Announce the results.
Ayes 126, noes 1.
The bill is passed. Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you put Rules Report 474 on page 10 by Mr. Moya before the House?
Clerk will read.
Senate 8102, Rules Report 474, Committee on Rules, an act to amend the general business law.
An explanation is requested, Mr. Moya.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This bill would provide protections for job seekers who choose to use employment agencies by reforming the contract procedures through transparency and translating documents. The bill would require that certain provisions of those contracts be included in plain language terms and condition statements given to the consumer in their first language. And it creates an awareness campaign executed by the Office of New Americans so that job seekers will know what agencies are reputable and prohibits the agencies from collecting any upfront fees.
Mr. McKevitt.
Sure. Will the sponsor yield for a few questions, please?
Will you yield, Mr.
Yes.
Moya?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Moya yields.
We have debated a similar bill in the past. And I noticed that you've decided to make some changes and reintroduce it into a brand new bill. So can you please describe the differences from the bill we debated previously and the bill that we have before us tonight?
Sure. As a matter of fact, we have taken out several pieces that were in the previous bill. One of the things that we've taken out were the bona fide order, having the Attorney General's enforcement, the private right of action, retaliation, and the retroactive fee refund has been eliminated from this bill.
And I know there's still some concerns for some, for example, in certain types of professional agencies, concerns that it's difficult for them to give the terms of the contract because sometimes those wages aren't set beforehand. How is that issue going to be addressed?
So we've been working very closely with the talent agents on this issue, and we're looking forward to sitting down with them and looking for a carve-out for them in the near future. But what this bill would actually do is it would provide, and wouldn't affect them in the way that this bill would provide, that when a contract is actually made, that certain provisions be included in that contract, and that the terms and conditions that the agency is required to distribute, it's not a binding contract and is only in plain language summary of the terms of that contract. The talent agencies were not targeted by this legislation, and as I stated before, we've expressed a willingness to work with them in future legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Den Decker?
Yes. Will the sponsor yield for a question?
Will the sponsor yield?
So, Mr. Moya, going back to the talent agencies, so you're saying you are going to meet with them and create a carve-out for them, but as of right now, the way the legislation is, will it affect the talent agencies as far as when they're doing representation and they don't know exactly what the contract is going to pay, where they're being recommended to go work?
So right now, if under the current bill, what would happen is that it would not fall under, if they were going to an audition, this would not apply to them. It's only once they get a contract with an agency or with a director, that's when this would apply to them. That's when the contract is actually signed, that's when this would go into effect.
So how about agencies that represent, for example, actors that are going to do background work and they don't actually sign a contract with the agency? The agency is getting paid by the production company.
So there would be a carve out for themselves, but right now the way it would be structured for them, it would be that with the terms, it would be specified in the terms and conditions of their contract that they have with the agency. So, and it's not legally binding.
So I guess my question is, so as of right now, if this bill passes and becomes law as is, and a talent agency were to recommend work to a member of the Screen Actors Guild to work background on a TV show based on the SAG contract rate with the production company, but that talent agency is the one that's actually recommending the actor go there because talent agency is getting paid by the production company, are they breaking any law under this bill, and are they open to any prosecution or fine or anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Titone.
Would the sponsor yield, please?
Yes.
Yeah, Francisco, often when a talent signs with an agency, it's for the exclusive representation, and there's no guarantee that there would be work or what that type of work would be. So how is that addressed in this until there is the specific carve-out? Because each job could be different. Some could be long-term, some could be short-term, and there's never the guarantee of...
So that's what they would be putting in the contract. It's up front. So,
but if there is no contract, then what happens?
So the contract is between the employment agency, not the actor. So with the actor.
Right. So then you have your talent having a contract to be represented by an agency, and that's so. In other words, so now the talent doesn't go to is bound to talent agency A and can't go to talent agency B for work. So now they're bound by that contract for representation. The agent then goes out to get or works to get the talent, the actor or actress or what a musician, whatever it is, work in the field. That work could sometimes be short-term, long-term. Sometimes there could be successful franchising where the contracts with the production company changes. So how would this impact that scenario until there is a carve-out or something that addresses the talent agencies?
Got it. The point of it would be to have all of that in the contract would be all on the upfront of the contract would be all those terms would have to be placed before they get that.
So now what the talent agencies have to do is have agreements with talent as to what the terms of their relationship will be, and they have to now address in that talent contract what we're putting before the House right now. Am I getting this correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Francisco.
Read the last section.
This act shall take effect immediately.
The clerk will record the vote. Ms. Glick to explain her vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To explain my vote, I just want to thank the sponsor for fielding some questions both on the floor and prior to the debate, addressing the issue that is of concern to many of us regarding talent agencies, which are quite different from the employment agencies that are the target of this legislation. And I appreciate that there will be further conversations to clarify that this is not a direct impact on talent agencies in the entertainment field, which would not necessarily be good for either the agency or for the talent. So very much appreciate the efforts and will withdraw my request and vote in the affirmative.